Merry Christmas, everyone, from the Lost in Possession podcast. And today we are bringing you the gift of a good old fashioned football debate. We've kept it generic, but we are today are going to debate the three things each of us want to see changed in football in 2026. As always, make sure you've hit the subscribe button. Make sure you join in the debate throughout and let us know what your one thing you'd like to change is. But without further ado, let's kick things straight off. Jamie, we'll come to you first. No pressure. What is the one thing that you are sick of in football and you want to see it changed?
Well, it is something that I'm completely sick of, and it's something I've been sick of for years, and it's time wasting. I can't stand it. It's it's just so annoying. And if you look at like the percentages of how much we actually watch of a 90-minute match, it's something like 60 minutes at best. A lot of clubs that are even lower with the ball going out of play. So I say get rid of added time or extra time, whatever you want to call it, in both halves, and actually have a proper stop clock watch. That ball goes out of play, you stop it. And we have the technology these days, so we should be able to track. Once the ball goes out, that's when the time stops. Everyone can then see it within the ground and at home of how long's actually left of a game, rather than us having a guess when the 90 minutes comes up, or the board goes up 7 minutes, and we all go, where the hell 7 minutes come from? Why is it not more? Depending on if you need a goal or not, it's sort of conclusively proof of we will watch a 90-minute football match, and it will stop time wasting because it will really, really not matter when you might have a substitution that lasts 45 seconds. They'll add on, another 20. They'll add on 20 instead. Stops the time wasting, in my opinion.
Yeah, a bit like rugby. Rugby does that, where they literally stop the time exactly. I guess and it would ultimately, that would, as a little bit stop start, literally as it would be, it would then basically eliminate the whole point of time wasting. So I do think you'd probably see a bit of a behavior change over time with that. The only thing I'm thinking is like, would we not then dispute when they stop it? I don't know rugby that well enough to comment on how they do it, but I feel like there'd then be debates about when they're stopping the clock, and it could get a little bit messy potentially, maybe.
But most are going to talk about a second. Sort of like
Yeah,
that the ball goes out of play for a throw in, you stop the clock straight away. And you can time it so well. Let's say the person missed the button, you can put it back a second if you must. Sort of, there's no problem of it just going back 1 second, because let's be honest, that doesn't stop anything. That just continues the way it is. So I think it wouldn't matter. And if people are moaning about 1 second, they need a life, to be perfectly honest. Because what's 1 second?
yeah, yeah. It would be quite interesting because it has become such a fabric of football time wasting, especially like teams that are scrapping relegation, and we've seen it a million times where a relegation threatened team will come to the Etihad, they'll come to Stamford Bridge, they'll come to the Emirates, and from minute one, it will just be time wasting. In some cases, Arteta's even used it quite well. Um, but
No, no, no.
but no,
Every club has done it. Every club has done it. It's not just talking about lower league teams. I've watched City do it. I've been at the Emirates where, especially when we weren't as good, we were time wasting. We got a 0-0 draw that game, and that was a good result for us at that point. And we were time wasting from the first minute. But then, yes, like you said, people have come to the Etihad and started time wasting from minute one. They'll feign injuries here and there. Oh, I've got cramp in my leg when you probably haven't, because you're a professional footballer and you're in peak physique. You really won't be getting cramp after sort of 80 minutes. So it's things like that. It stops all of that, and even if so, let's say they actually do get cramp, we'll believe them, and it doesn't time waste. So it stops this sort of dark arts in football in a way.
Reese, what's your thoughts on that one?
I mean that time wasting is nothing new. It's it's been in the game for over a century. So in my opinion, I don't really see how it's really going to stop it. Teams are just going to evolve. They're going to adapt their ways to do it. Um, and I fear that there are laws explicit in the game about time wasting, and they've introduced things as well, and things like that. But I look at it and I say, like, surely this is only just going to widen the gap because teams that are going to go there and try and hold up for a 1-0, teams that are struggling, etc., if they're going to be penalised for that, we've seen it already where ultimately the better teams, and I mean better in general, the more quality, the more money, go on to win. It's how like VAR has impacted things in the sense of you can't get that lucky deflected offside goal anymore that keeps you in the league. Unfortunately, you have to rely on your quality, which is what football should be, but it also means that your quality is not going to be as a match to the others over time. And I think that's going to impact things. I think it's purely tactical, and we don't mind when our team does it, but we seem to have an issue when the other team does it. So I don't see how stopping it is going to really clamp down on it. I think the pace of the game will probably just get slower. That's how I see it, or teams will find other ways to clamp down on it because the more they can take the momentum out of you, then, stopping the time doesn't really make a difference.
But sort of like them, like saying they sort of feign an injury and things like that. They still will stop momentum, so teams can still do that. Teams can still time waste on the pitch, but you got to remember we're all paying fans. Why are we not getting the full match and getting sort of 2/3 of it instead? Like I don't want a sort of the argument obviously against it is I don't want a game that lasts 2 and a bit hours instead of an hour and a half. I don't want that extra sort of time wasted, especially for me who travels up to Manchester, which means I'd have to get home even later from a football match. But it's something that we're paying money for, and we're technically being a bit conned by it in terms of we're not getting the full 90 minutes. Because let's be honest, added time or extra time, however you want to call it, does not compute to how much actually the ball is in play and we're watching the game. Because you can still time waste by holding it in the corner and things like that. They're passing it around at the back and sort of creating it so you can't get chased down. There are ways of doing it, but I'd rather see the ball in play and watching the players actually play football than it just going out, player going down, things like that. That's why I want to. That's why I want to get rid of it.
I think, like, I look at things like, for players trying to waste time with an injury, he has to wait, was it 30 seconds to come back on again? It surprised me how many teams haven't taken advantage of that, in my opinion, because I think that would cause a lot of teams to realize they can't keep doing that. But like I said, this isn't a recent issue. In over 140 years, there's not really been a genuine solution. It's all good attackers coming out and saying stop time wasting. Well, obviously, you're attackers. Of course, you don't want to time waste. You want to get on with it. Defenders, of course, you're going to want to time waste. You need to slow the game down as much as you can. So there's not been I said this is nothing new. And I just think teams will evolve their time wasting tactics. But I think factors like making a player wait before they come on again, or you know, other incidences like that would help mitigate it. But I think other teams will just come up with other ways.
Yeah, I think what I like it as an idea because it would get you the outcome. But I'm just trying to think logistically. Like, imagine how much longer we'd be at games for, which I guess to your point makes more sense for value for money. But think of like a broadcaster where they've got a 5:30 and an 8 o'clock kickoff. You'd end up overrunning, I think, at the way players time waste at the minute. You'd have the 5:30 kickoff running over the 8:30. They'd have to go like split.
I'll be honest. There shouldn't be an 8 o'clock kickoff. It's ridiculous that there's an 8 o'clock kickoff. That's a whole nother. I could have
Well,
got.
imagine the 8 o'clock kickoff actually to that point. You'd miss the train home.
Well, you missed the train home anyway. Most of the time, you miss the train home anyway. That's why I should be out. That was nearly my choice. I nearly said about the broadcasting time, to be honest. So let's not get me started on that.
All right. Well, before we move on, viewers, let us know your thoughts on that one in the comments. Time wasting, is it an issue? Do you like Jamie's solution? Yes or no? Let's move on. I'll give you my one. So I've stuck with VAR. I've tried to be more specific. Obviously, VAR, we could probably do an 8-hour podcast on saying everything that's right and wrong with it. But for me, the main issue I want to see changed is the ref's ability to overturn and stick with their actual own decision they've made on the pitch. So at the minute, we've brought in VAR to designed to, as you said, Reese, eliminate those dodgy handballs, the offsides, the deflections, and what have you, and all of that stuff. But we are seeing time and time again, pretty much since its inception, that the second that ref goes to the screen and they're told in their earpiece to go review it, we know the outcome already. And this has literally been the case 99% of times. There was one or two, probably over the last years, where a ref's actually stuck with their decision. But it genuinely, I'm pretty sure 99% will be the exact number. We never ever see the ref stick with their decision or overturn, basically go against what they're being told in their ear. And I think what's really interesting, I don't know if you remember the Liverpool Spurs one that was really controversial. I think it was with Diaz, if I'm not mistaken. And that was a really good example where we heard the footage. The refs on the pitch, VAR booth is what, three, four, five guys, and that ref on the pitch is being told by three different individuals, you are wrong. So the problem is when they're told to review the decision on the screen, they're already outnumbered. They're already basically having three people tell them they're wrong. So it's a lot easier for the refs to just go to default mode and go, yeah, we'll overturn it because of X, Y, and Z. But for me, that is a problem in itself because the ref is watching it in real time. The ref isn't watching a still image or, there's been so many recently where it's just like the still image looks terrible, but in the reality of the game, it's just not a red card. But as soon as they go to the screen, game over, job done. We know they're getting sent off. We know it's a penalty. It's boring and it's kind of pointless. So I want to see that change where the ref has more authority to go, you know what, I made the right decision. Don't care what VAR is telling me. Job done. What do you think?
The problem I have with this is normally they basically say don't bother going to the screen because you're right. The only way you overturn it is they go, look, this is what happened, just so you know what's gone on in the game. We think it's a penalty. Have a look, see for yourself. I get that you're sort of saying it's like a 3 or 4 on 1. So it is kind of, you go with, right, the majority say it's this, then give the penalty, give the red card, whatever. But the problem is, I don't want refs going over to the screen when they're all going, actually, you've made the correct decision, because that just wastes time. So really, I only want him to go over to it so he knows what's going on and he can overturn it. But I do understand where you're sort of saying, if they go to the screen, it's they're giving the other decision. They're giving the red card, the penalty, things like that. But it's like I don't want them overturning it, or I don't want them going to the screen when everyone's like, you've made the right decision, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they do that because obviously at the minute, if there is a decision, the ref doesn't give it, VAR will check it and then clear it without stopping the game. Like that makes sense. That's fine because you're not stopping the game. You're basically saying we all agree with you, ref. I'm saying the ones where they're saying the ref's not giving it, then VAR are going, have a look yourself. But by that point, the three of them in the earpiece or four, whatever it is, have all gone, yeah, look at this, blah, 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 we all agree, go review it. By which point they've basically already made up the ref's mind telling him he's wrong. So for him to then go to the screen, basically tell three or four guys in his ear, no, you're wrong, then to waste everyone's time to not overturn the decision, I think it puts the ref in such a difficult position to actually overturn it and go, I'm right. And I think that's the problem. Because we've seen it play out, right? It's not 99 out of 100 times is the ref going to overturn their decision.
No, I think the issue is don't forget it's the human aspect of it. I think and everybody would feel like this. If you've got three other people telling you, you're more likely to going to go with them, aren't they? Because it plants the seed of doubt. You're going to put your trust in these guys in the VAR room because they're the ones watching multiple screens, they're watching multiple incidents take place. So their judgment is going to be much more accurate to you because you're there on the field, only seeing it in real time. So I think it's difficult because you're going to listen to those people because they are the experts, so to speak. And I think that's the important route to take. I think maybe tweaking it where there's a time limit. Maybe you could check the VAR, issues, or perhaps you can only have two, three calls a game. I don't know, but it's very, very difficult because there's a no-win situation here. If the referee backs himself and it's wrong, we'll all go, "Why didn't you go to the VAR?" And then he listens to the VAR and he's still wrong, he gets moaned at. Or if he's right, he said, "You need to back yourself because it doesn't benefit this team." I still think there's that element of that. Is no matter what they do, they just can't win. Um, and I think it's a matter of sometimes you think, is it worth just getting rid of it altogether? I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard because VAR still gets to the right decision more often than we did before. So in that sense, I do think it's better for the game if you're looking at the bottom line numbers. But we're saying VAR, we don't want to re-ref the games, but we ultimately are re-refing the games because three people are telling the ref is wrong and basically saying you saw it in real time, but we've seen an angle that looks really bad as a still image, and then we've watched it again, then we've all agreed. Do you know what I mean? Like they just you've got to have some serious balls on you for that ref. You see it in Europe a bit more, which I will say. I think the standard of refing arguably is better in Europe, where they do sometimes more often stick with their decision. But I've not really ever seen it in the Prem, given one or two times.
So do you want the ref basically? Do you want VAR to say you should check this, go to the screen, and don't give an opinion? Full stop. Because that's the only way I can. Because what I don't really understand is what the rule change is in terms of you want him to overturn or keep his decisions, but what do you want him to say? Just VAR to be there to go check your decision on the screen. Full stop. Don't say you're wrong, you're right, anything. Just say go check on the screen. You might want to look at this kind of vibes, and then say nothing after that. Is that kind of what you're
Yeah,
wanting from
te
this?
technically, yeah, I guess it's not maybe a rule change because technically the refs have the power now to. I don't actually know the VAR ruling, but refs technically have the power to stick with their original decision.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. It literally never happens, and it is one. It is probably less than 1% of the time.
It's that element of doubt, isn't it? You're going to take the advice of other people. And also, if they start sticking to their decisions, they're probably going to get thrown under a bus. We didn't tell him to do that. Nothing to do with us. And you just think, well, where's the support for them then?
Yeah,
You know, I th it's hard.
it's not good. Yeah, this would not eliminate debate because there's still an element of a ref going, "I'm right, you're wrong." But what it would do, I think, is give a bit more authenticity and a little bit more understanding of the context of the game. The ref should be trusted if they've seen it in real time. Then they see it. Sometimes they're 2, 3 meters away, and this has happened so many times with penalty decisions. The ref's 2, 3 meters away. They've called it in real time, and then VAR's telling them they're wrong because it's like the slightest contact or this and that. Like in those scenarios, the ref has seen it better than the guys in the VAR booth watching it slowed down. And sometimes these tackles, in real time are nothing, but then slowed down, it looks like he's going to break his leg, and it's like, I what I want to see is refs back their own decision more, and I think we'll get to a better place where decisions are given more correctly. But there'll still be an element of debate either way.
I think the
Yeah, I know there's
problem
an argument
is
about. Oh,
there's
go
a
on.
reason why VAR was put in place in the first instance. It's because there was decisions being done wrong. So that's why I don't like this rule change of keep the referee's decision when he's probably wrong. The reason why they take him to the screen is because they think he's wrong, and if they were refereeing it, because they're all meant to be all referees,
Mm.
they're going, that's wrong. That's actually a red card because I get what you're saying. In real time, you should have a better view of it, but you might not be able to see the trailing leg that's gone down the back of him. It's sort of like
Yeah,
you can miss stuff while you're right next to it, and where you can see the different angles and screens. I think you have a better chance of doing it. I think VAR isn't the problem. I think the rules are too complicated and there's just not enough consistency. And that's the biggest problem with it, rather than the ref should stick with his own decision when people may have better views through different camera angles.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the consistency is caused by the confusion of the rules. Like human interpretation will always come into it. It's when people go, "What about this incident 2 months ago?" Well, that's 2 months ago. Like, these things happen. Everyone seems to think they're an expert, but I don't exactly see them volunteering to stand out on the field and referee themselves. Um, I know people look at suggestions like put ex pros in there. I think that's a stupid idea because they'll obviously go for against the rules. They'll give that leniency, as we saw the debate with Chelsea Newcastle incident. And they get moaned at for that. And they're not. But put it this way, they're not exactly saying that they should be out on the pitch refereeing. Obviously, they want to be out in the background. So it's a never-ending cycle. I think even if it's allow a number of stoppages like to challenge another challenge, that just leads to the time wasting debate. Clubs will go, let's put one in now. We need a minute. We
Yeah,
need a minute. This. So this all going to add this vicious cycle, and unfortunately, it's something that you just sometimes have to accept.
yeah, yeah. And just a quick final point to answer your question, Jamie. I realised I didn't answer it. Is basically I don't want the VAR booth to make a decision for him before. Basically, I'd say send him to the screen. Go have a look at this. We think you might have missed it. Let me know your decision. Then he makes a decision rather than you're wrong. Send him off. Basically. Um, all right, that is rule change number two. As always, hit us up in the comments. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let us know. Third and final, Reese, what have you got?
Yeah, so my rule change is a bit of a big one. It's a complex one. It's one that requires a lot of redoing with the structure of the game. And it actually involves the transfer window. I'm not saying about banning a January transfer window. I'm saying about we need to redo the game and get rid of the transfer window full stop. Um, the reason I say that is because the finances in the game are absolutely insane now. Clubs in the most recent transfer window spent over 3.1 billion in the Premier League alone. Um, and it's just generating money. And because they need to spend more money, they need to play more games. And because they're playing more games, players are getting injured more, they're having shorter careers, they're more tired. I think it was Liverpool played 62 last season, including preseason friendlies. Chelsea played 70 if you include preseason friendlies and that Club World Cup competition. It's not sustainable. So how do you do this? Well, we introduce an American system. We introduce a draft system where players are transferred around through academies. How can we do that? Well, they do it in the US just fine. It means you don't have to pay transfer fees, and it means that every club gets a fair share. I say this because the gap is only getting wider. As we talk about Semenyo, Bournemouth will suffer because Semenyo goes. Crystal Palace will suffer because their policy is to sell their best players. Sunderland will do the same. Brighton will fall victim to it. As we've already seen, the gap will only get wider and it makes the game pointless if only certain teams can win it. So let's take a step back. Let's do a draft system where, because let's be honest, how many clubs do not really use their academies as it is? How many clubs use their academies as a cash cow? Okay. So before you jump in with me about how I'm so wrong, all right, 96% of players don't make it into pro football, okay, according to the Athlete Academy. Roughly 0.5% of academy entrants go on to sign professional contracts. 98% of players who earn academy scholarship at 16 are not playing in the top five tiers of English football by the age of 18. Yes, does this link to this? But it links to the point that I think there are issues where players I think go straight for the big clubs instead of wanting to start at the bottom. But we're seeing a huge issue where clubs are not using their academy; they're just buying players. What's the point? What's the point? What's the point of Brighton doing all the hard work for you to just steal them? What's the point of Palace putting the hard work into Eze for Arsenal to steal him and weaken them in the process? When everyone can get a fair share. If you finish bottom of the league, you get the first pick when you're in the championship. Okay, you get the first pick of a good academy player. You grow them, you let them learn. I think it just works better. There are a lot of complex things to work out here, but in the long run, it makes sense. Players will earn more in wages because you don't have to pay transfer fees. Players actually get used through academies. They go to other clubs. They actually get to play because sometimes they have no choice. But you can also tie it in with the fact that they get an education, make them go through university while they're there, and they get an education. That's what they do in the NFL. Players get a degree. So if the NFL career doesn't work out, they've got a system in place. I don't think we really have that here. I think players are let go and they don't know what to do. This may sound absurd, but I think the game is heading this way, and I think it should.
I think the biggest problem with this is the relegation in Premier League. We don't have that. You don't have that in America with the NFL. It's if you have a crap season, you have a crap season. You get a good round draft next year, and then you go to next season. You play a few meaningless games, and you move on. The problem you have is relegation because a top tier academy player could go down to the championship, but then do you do a draft form in the championship as well, in League One, in League Two? Who gets what academy players from which clubs in that? Do they get sort of, can you have a League Two team picking a Premier League academy player and vice versa? That's where I think a massive complication is because NFL is it's just in America as well. Whereas why is a Spanish top player gonna wait around for the transfer window sort of spiral in England? They won't, and I don't see how then you get players go from Spain to England or other countries. Of course, that's where the bigger complication is. It's more broad, and the structure of football doesn't work the same as the NFL. Because
I
I
agree. It's
understand
a
what you.
complex situation. It is a very complex situation. You'd have, and let's be honest, the way the European clubs are saying they want to close this gap with the Premier League. Okay, the Premier League blows them out the water financially, so they can compete in this way, and I think clubs will go for it. I believe relegation will be on borrowed time eventually with the way we've got the business model changing, and the Premier League probably wants to thank its lucky stars that the teams that got promoted are doing all right in comparison to the last couple of years. Because the more teams that go straight back down, you genuinely have to say, what's the point? What's the point of even doing it? Um, with the way the games are going and more European competitions, the European League is going to become near enough one whole league as its own, as if the US. The Champions League will be the Super Bowl, for example. It's how it works, and I think that's how the game will go over time. But I think it's got potential because players will play, academy players will play. They get an education in the process, which is important. And it just otherwise it just becomes pointless. Chelsea made 250 million pound of academy sales in 3 years. They're just siling the players off. So it makes you think, look, the Chelsea academy is great, but then what's the point of it if they're just going to buy other people? You might as well have that academy status. Yes, you could say, well, why should we lose them? But you're losing them anyway because you let them go in order to buy other players. You bought Garnacho in, for example. That's just a rough example I'm using, but you let others go. Do those other clubs benefit? Probably not because they eventually sell them as well.
It's a tough one because I do fundamentally agree with the point around academies and the churn rate of players who are signed versus players that make it is ridiculously low, and that in itself is a problem. I'm not convinced. Again, I like you'd have at what point would you cut off the Premier League and go, tough shit, Southampton? You were there 2 years ago. You're now never getting in the Premier League ever again. You resign to the Championship forever. Like that in itself would that in itself feels so ridiculous that it couldn't actually happen. But I think where it gets interesting is there could be better utilization of academy talent, and you could try and have it a bit like in America with like college football or college whatever you want to call it. It's not football, obviously, but that's what they call it. But that I don't know, just where somehow academies or college or aspiring athletes or players are somehow made into a bigger deal. Right, I know we've got under 23s, under 21s, under 19s, under whatever's, which I guess is that kind of that. But could you have a Chelsea B team that is in I don't know. Could you have that as a different team in a league that could work there? Well, I know there's many issues with that in itself, but is there a way to make like academy or prospect a bigger deal, which would help raise the bar of that? I feel like that makes more sense than having this kind of draft system. Because, like to Jamie's point, how do you even determine who's the number one draft pick? Like top goals, people vote, like
Yeah, you get that sort of element to it of, You get an allocation, you get a slot, you can trade your slots because you know that round six is the pick you want. Because not everyone's all in one go, right? It tends to be quarterbacks in the NFL tend to get picked first, just an FYI. But you could tie up with local universities. Chelsea could tie up with it, somewhere like the University of Surrey, where a lot of the players live, probably come from. Let them get educated there, have the Chelsea B team play there, grow that aspect of the game because college football is actually very, very good. Their stadiums are insane. And you watch them play. I think at the moment the gap has got big. We mentioned Southampton, they had a huge policy of producing players. Then their luck ran out. It become we need instant success here. We don't have time. And eventually it caught up with them. Monaco haven't been the same since the 2016-17 season. Not all of them were academy, but they won the league and the whole team near enough got torn apart. And they've never recovered from that. And the gap only widens. Yes, there are chinks in the armor because if I was an American living in the Miami, Florida, and I was drafted into the cold New England team, yeah, it's not ideal. But you play, you get better. Don't sign a new contract. Go somewhere for free. That's how I see it.
How would so you're saying we wouldn't be able to buy our players from abroad though?
Well, if you have a universal aspect of Europe working towards it, like you can draft Juventus or wherever. That's the thing. There's a lot of complexities here. This is just a theory in place. The game is changing. If you look at the NFL, there was a guy from Wales went over to there. He was part of the draft. He went to university, he won a scholarship. So there's a lot to work out, and it's a lot of meaning you'd have to slowly progress it through, like transition out. I mean, at the moment, clubs are waiting for players to become free agents more than ever. If you've noticed, like Mbappe being a prime example, so it's no real different at the moment. It's just, I think it will help stop the gap widening. It goes from being only certain boys can play to now everyone else has a chance. There's a lot into this, and I'm sure people can explain it a little bit better in the comments. And I think if it developed, it could work. But obviously, it starts with the Premier League. But yeah, you're going to have to allow France to agree, which I think there would be agreements. And then you'd have to have Italy. They want to close the gap with the Premier League, is probably the main argument. So I think it has time. It has a lot of issues to work out, but it's not impossible.
I
Yeah.
think it's more the point of the NFL is lucky that it's only in America. I know America's a big place, but they kind of have all agreed it's one country. That's where all the players are brought in. And if you want, like you said, the person from Wales, he's having to go and live in America. That's the biggest problem I sort of see. Because even if you just keep it in Europe, you then you exclude people in South America. You exclude people in America. You exclude, Asian, Africa, because you've just kept it in Europe with the
But they've
academy
already
system. And
they've
then,
already tried a Super League, so I don't think they care about other people. They'll
well, no,
care
but
about
that's
making money, and
not.
they'll make more money.
Yeah, but people who want to become players can still sort of. Let's say the Super League did happen, that Man City could still buy someone from Boca Juniors. That doesn't stop them from doing that, and it means a player who's come up from the Boca Juniors academy can go play in Europe. But then in this sort of aspect, possibly they can't. They can't ever. In a way, I don't know how it would work. I know you're saying it's more complex than this. That's why I just think it limits the world aspect of football, which American football doesn't have, which is why it's called American football, because it's just in America. But yeah, I get the point. Academies need to be important, but I see a lot of issues with it. But I know you said it's complex.
Yeah. We may need an entire different podcast to debate that idea because that could take several years. But for now, that is all we've got time for. As always, let us know your thoughts on that idea, which one you preferred the most. But as always, wishing you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.